Have you given any thought to why horror is something people willingly subject themselves to?
It's fun. I think people enjoy seeing a horror film or reading a scary book the way they enjoy going into a laugh in the dark or on a roller coaster ride. Mm-hmm. You go in knowing, or you go in with high expectations. And I think the ones that work on that audience are the ones that really pay off. In other words, the ones that give you that little zets and give you that involuntary response reaction to it that you went in hoping to get.
I think something else that horror does is society gives points, you know, for good emotional behavior. So we get points for exercising those emotional muscles that society approves of: love, friendship, loyalty, humor, that sort of thing. But for every one of those good emotions, we have a dark one as well. We have fear, we have aggressiveness, we have anger, we all have, I suppose, urges that sometimes tend towards sadism, that sort of thing. And a horror story or a horror movie gives us a chance to exercise that side in a comparatively harmless way.
Exorcised?
Exorcised. Yeah.
Do you fellows happen to specialize in this field and could just as easily be in another one? Or if not, then mustn't you be weird in some way?
I don't know, I work at a car wash, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, I really wonder about that. I was trying to think of a tactful way to put it. But,
I don't think we're any more weird than
Steve
the
is
people
weird.
who enjoy the things we produce. I think it's the same thing. We're just producers and they're consumers, but we're subject to the same emotions and working with
there has to
them.
be some real reason that you're in this field and not another one.
Well, I think you have a predilection toward it.
Yeah.
Ira Levin and I discovered that as children, we entertained other children by telling ghost stories to them. And so it was there, and I think I made mine up, but I'm sure he made his up. And it was just a way of exercising our imaginations that we came to very young.
Mm-hmm. I was warped as a child. So a lot of horror comics in my past, and a lot of horror movies and that sort of thing, and it warped me as a kid. And
seriously?
Yeah, seriously warped me. And the thing is, I think that see, they know. In the world as it is today, though, I think if you don't have a few warps in your record, you can't get along. And that's one of the great appeals that the horror story has. There's been a lot of analysis, a lot of it almost ludicrous, it seems to me, about horror in the wake of the big hits like George's Dawn of the Dead and Ghost Story and The Shining and all of that sort of thing. And really, I think what a lot of it is a sort of harmless blow-off for anxieties and bad feelings.
Yeah. Where would we have seen your warpedness if we'd known you earlier, before you began?
I get rid of most of it through this sort of thing. People say, well, do you have bad dreams? And the answer is no. I give them all to somebody else. I sleep well. And it works that way for the writer, I think, or the filmmaker as well, I guess. There's a kind of blow-off. And
if you didn't have that blow-off, would you be haunting graveyards and
graveyards might be haunting you. I think you're tapping another emotion. I mean, I've often felt that to some extent with me it was accident. There were genre films that I loved of all different types. I love jungle movies. And had my first hit been a jungle movie, I might be a great jungle movie maker. But so to that extent it was accidental. And but I think there's a list of those involuntary emotions. Laughter, if you can make an audience laugh, cry, startle. Those are the things that you're really trying to do, and that's what you're sort of honing your work down to try to accomplish, to get that involuntary response out. And it's those involuntary responses that make people say, gee, that was great. Yeah. But when people say about Salem's Lot, geez, I loved it, they're basically saying it scared the hell out of me. It's clear cut. They don't, it's basically a different response that you get from a reader that read Salem's Lot or Rosemary's Baby than you get from a reader that read The Winds of War. If you ask someone, did you like The Winds of War, they'll go into 10 minutes about you know, but if you ask someone, did you like Rosemary's Baby, what they immediately respond to is, yeah, it scared me. What they mean is, it scared me.
Yeah, but I think it goes beyond that. I really do, and that when people say that I love Salem's Lot, I think also, besides the wonderful, wonderful scares, I think they're saying that the scares worked because they felt involved at a gut level with the people, and that the characters convinced them. And when they say they like Rosemary's Baby, the same is true, and they responded also to the satire. Because horror has it offers great entree to social observation and to satire. I think there's a lot of fun in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's that wonderful moment in Kubrick's film where Nicholson looks through the door and says, "Here's Johnny." My kids run around and say that now. You know? I have a 3-year-old who
In The
goes around.
Shining?
Yeah. I have a 3-year-old boy who goes around saying, "Daddy's not here now." The little finger thing. It's very funny. Yeah. Another thing.
He's
that,
not warped then.
of course he's warped.
He's
yeah.
warped.
Yes, he's very warped. One of the things that all these genres do, I responded to what George said about if his first hit had been a jungle picture, because you take all of these things and they're genres. There's horror, there's, for instance, the crime picture, my God, can this be the end of Rico? Jungle pictures, all of these things. And what all this genre fiction does, mysteries, is they make the writer or the filmmaker tell a real story. You know, and I think in a lot of ways you just gravitate toward that idea of story. You want to tell tales.
That's very important, I think. I think that's the heart of it, really. That there's a story which can engulf you and grab your lapels the way fairy tale did when you were 6 years old.
And you can't tell a story. You can't tell a story. I mean, you can't scare anybody unless there's a story
Unless there's
and
a strong
characters for them to
narrative.
be involved
Sure.
in.
Yeah.
Scares don't exist in a vacuum.
So you're forced
Some
into
real
telling a
set.
story, as you're saying. Yeah.
Even as just now that clipboard moved and no one was near it.
Unfortunately, I was near.
Oh, you did that. Okay, I feel better then. I don't know what this is relevant to, but Groucho Marx once in a Hollywood dinner introduced Spike Lee as the only man who had never made a horror movie intentionally. When those of you here who didn't write The Shining read it, did it scare you?
I was terrified by it. I thought it was a great book, and it just it bowled me over, and I was just
I pay him to say
scared to
these
death.
Thank you. That's great.
It's there are many people who feel that book has given them the scare of their lives, and
It's funny because when an interviewer says to me, "Well, what scares you?" You know, this is one of the questions you come up against. I'm a little bit flabbergasted because my immediate response is, let's try to think of something that doesn't scare me, you know, in one form or another. I can remember, for instance, my mother, when I was just a little kid, they used to have these machines in shoe stores, and you look down into the machine and you saw your bones inside it, you know, in your shoes.
Yes.
And I had my feet in one of those machines, and she gave a scream and said, "Don't do that. That will give you cancer." And for weeks after, I would look at my feet to see if they'd started to rot yet, you know. And I put that in a book, and I think one of the things that you do after a while is you begin to search out the things that scared you the most and try to get rid of them, you know.
That's interesting because obviously our first horrors come in childhood,
Exactly.
in various ways, and whether it's the older kid who convinces you that a bogeyman lives in the building that really houses a pump or something, or whatever it is. And I wondered, maybe it'd be interesting to learn in each of your cases if you had ones like that you remember that were striking, or maybe you were unusually susceptible as kids.
I was pretty susceptible, but I in addition to the bogeyman outside the window, I was susceptible to war scares. I remember propaganda comic books and things like that scared the hell out of me. And I remember John Cameron Swayze announcing that the Russians had the bomb, you know, when I was first watching The Tube. Those were the things that got to me. And I remember the bombers flying over the Bronx where I grew up, and blackouts and things like that.
Yes.
And those scared the hell out of me, inordinately, I think.
I was scared by those ingeniously racist posters that showed Japanese with rat bodies coming out of sewers.
Right. Wow.
Remember those during the war in the post
I've seen
office?
them.
Well,
and
these
things,
comic
and,
books had people bursting into homes and terrorizing the kids and eventually shooting everybody in the place while Dad was off at work. But those things scared the hell out of me, which is maybe why at least with my zombie films, I have a kind of a socio-political underbelly in them. You know, in other words, I don't know if I find it necessarily frivolous to just go out and be scared. I don't really, because I'm looking forward to Creepshow, which is a project that we're going to do together, and which is
Just
very
scare.
Yeah, just get in there and try to scare people. That's all. That's fun.
Yeah.
That's fun.
So, Levin, were you scared? Do you remember as a kid
I've
what
been sitting
scared
here
you?
trying to think of it, and I don't recall being scared at all. I think I was a very brave kid.
Whereas now you're scared.
Now I'm scared of everything.
I remember never being afraid of the dark. I don't know why people were, but I never understood why sometimes other kids had to sleep with the lights on.
I had to have a light.
Did you?
Yeah.
What did you think would get you if the light went on?
I didn't even really want to consider it, but what it might be. But I was sure that I would see it before it got me, and that probably my mind would crack open. I think as a kid I was really, worried a lot about going over the high side and into Banana Land and never getting back. I was very afraid of that.
Really?
As a kid, it wasn't so much being grabbed by something from the closet, so much as seeing it sort of coming toward me, and knowing there'd be no escape.
What?
It turned out to be my father-in-law.
Your father-in-law? Good of you to admit that. Can you remember when you first read something that made your hair stand up?
Oh, I can remember something. I remember this great Bennett Cerf anthology that I got when I was about 10 called Great Tales of Terror and the Supernatural. And I really burrowed into that book. And there was some of it that was so scary I could barely read it.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. I remember.
I was prompted to go read the H.G. Wells version of War of the Worlds after seeing the movie. And
I loved that film when I was a kid.
yeah, and the description in Wells, which of course the Wells was at first disappointing because it was nothing like the movie, but then I started to get into that, and the description of the aliens in that was the first thing that really scared me on the printed page.
Of course, Dracula. That's
Dracula.
Yeah, Dracula.
Sure.
You mean the movie?
scares. No, the book.
The book?
book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never read that as a
it's
kid.
that's a great thriller.
Much scarier than any of the movie versions today.
Yeah.
It is, isn't it? Yes, there are
Yeah.
wonderful things in the book. You wonder why they didn't do
never used
for the movie. There's a wonderful scene of that captainless boat comes ashore and a
Yes.
dog is seen to leap off and go into
Right.
yeah.
Which all those incidents have been included one time or another.
They've never
Did the
all
boat and
been
the-
put together, I don't think,
No.
in
The
one film.
Jourdan version was pretty true to
That was-
content.
yeah, I thought
but
that was the
it
best.
Yeah.
Mood, there was an interesting one with Palance a couple of
I
years
heard that was
before
good.
that.
I never saw
I've
it.
never seen that one. Now, the one that you were talking about was the one that was the PBS one, right? Louis
That was
Jourdan.
very
true to
stylish.
content. That was
Yeah.
Louis Jourdan.
Yeah,
that was a
as
nice
the
one.
Count.
Do you envy people who have seen ghosts, as I do?
I don't know. Not at all.
No. I do. I would wonder if for any reason you had gone out of your way to stay overnight in Longleat or one of
I think
those
we go out
well-known
of our
haunted
way not to. I
English,
think.
places. I really envy people who've seen them. I can do without seeing a UFO, but I certainly would like to see a ghost.
I'd like to see a UFO.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Yeah, I'd rather see a UFO, I think,
You would.
than a ghost.
With
Yeah.
an ghost. How about a ghost getting out of the UFO?
There's an
That's the
idea.
ultimate.
But you see, in our business, if we saw one of those things, we'd never tell anyway, because they just
First of all,
say,
they never believe
"Oh,
it."
well, it was Straub."
That's right. He's got
It
a
was
crazy.
coming out.
Sure.